Good afternoon and aloha. Okay, try that again. Good afternoon. How are you folks? Welcome. Nice to see you all here. My name is Thomas Dauberts. I'm Executive Director of Friends of Kīlauea Wildlife Refuges, and good to see you all here for another Princeville Moʻolelo series. This is our chance to come together as a community and talk story and learn and share all kinds of good information. And today we're just so honored to be sharing stories and information from a really important partner in our work, Pacific Rim Conservation. So I'm really excited to have Dylan and Dave here representing just a portion of that work, and so appreciative of you. So thank you for being here, and thank you folks as well. Welcome to the folks on Zoom. Patty's administering the room, so if there are any questions that you would like to share, please put them in the chat, and Patty would be happy to bring them into the room. So with that, this is my chance once a month to get up here and do my infomercial about who we are, why we're here, and why you're all here. So thanks for your patience as we go through that, but it's always my honor to represent, and I'm going to do this again, this work and our partnership with our Fish and Wildlife partners. So first of all, thanks again to our partners, Princeville at Hanalei Community Association, the beauty of the space and the technology and all that to allow us to do these hybrid meetings and to record these sessions to live out in perpetuity on our YouTube station. So thanks to them and to you. And again, who we are. I'm just so proud for the last 6.5 years to have served as the leader of this organization that was founded over 42 years ago to help support our island's 3 national wildlife refuges. What a gift that our island has 3 spaces set aside for the protection of endangered seabirds and wetland birds that desperately need us to be aware of them, to care about them, and move into advocacy and action. And that's part of what we as a Friends group get to do, is to help create that bridge to bring our community to this great work. So as an island, we have these 3 great refuges, Hanalei and Kūlauea, of course, established for the protection of endangered water birds. And although they're not the focus of today's talk, we'll continue to be raising awareness around these species whose numbers now are way too low. And as part of what we need to be communicating out into the world, awareness around species that have been here, and people on island might have had an opportunity to see in wetlands and streams, and maybe not aware that how important the populations here on Kauai, and in particular down in Hanalei National Wildlife Refuge, are to the survival of these species. So as our series progresses, we'll chat more about those species and those refuges. Today, we're focusing on our work out at Kīlauea Point and our support of endangered seabirds. We as a Friends group gather our community. We generate support that we get to channel back into work for our federal partners, and we provide in-kind staffing support. And we're coming into last year was a high water mark, another high water mark year for the total amount of funding that we've been able to generate from our community and share with our refuge partners. We're incredibly honored. Maybe at the next session, our fiscal year will have ended, and I can report out how much money we've actually been able to distribute, thanks to you, directly to the work and service of Fish and Wildlife. And it covers a whole host of different programs, from habitat maintenance and native plant restoration, going out into the community and doing outreach. If you're in Lihue and at Kukui Grove, we've been really honored to receive once again this year free space in a corner unit, kind of catty corner across from the food court. And there are 2 windows that have been donated to us. And so for the next month, we have a free educational display set up. In one window, it's a talking story about Kīlauea Point and our seabirds, and our beautiful taxidermy from the refuge is featured in the window. And then around the corner is a story about our wetland species. So incredible generosity of Kukui Grove for us to have that opportunity to meet the community right where they are at Kukui Grove, and to be able to pop up these displays. And that was part of our kuleana, to be able to create those displays and put them out in the world. We, of course, are really proud of our work helping to underwrite the cost of sick and injured wildlife transferred to our friends at Save Our Shearwaters. Their need financially continues to go up every year. And thanks to you, our community, and the support of our board, our commitment to that continues to go up year over year as well. And I'm really proud of that partnership. And additionally, we are committed to the future of wildlife conservation through little kinky programs all the way up to our scholarships. This year, we were able to provide $30,000 in scholarships to 14 students out there, going to go out into the world and do amazing things. And we're so honored to partner with them in their education and be a part of the future of wildlife conservation through honoring that esteemed gentleman, Daniel Moriarty. You can help us in all of this by signing up for our newsletter and being part of our community, supporting us through donations and memberships, volunteering your time on one of our refuges. Feel free to talk story with me and we'll find a way to plug you in. So with that, a quick plug for the next series in our continuation. A different day. We've been pretty consistent with our schedule, but we wanted to host the next one during National Wildlife Refuge Week. So on Wednesday, October 15th, we're going to feature another partner that we're really excited to talk story with, and that's the Kauai Endangered Seabird Recovery Project. So they'll continue a discussion about endangered seabirds and continuing that discussion during fallout season, which is a really critical time for us as a community to be aware of these birds and activate how we can help them. So really excited to have them as a part of our series as well. So mark your calendars, Wednesday, October 15th, back in this space as well and available on Zoom. But today we are joined by Dylan Blanchard, Pacific Rim Conservation, to talk to us about endangered seabirds. And let me say just a few quick words about this esteemed gentleman. He spent a healthy portion of his childhood outdoors and worked and enjoyed bird watching in the prairies and marshes of the Midwest. Fellow Midwest guy, I love it. I'm from Colorado, so a fellow Midwesterner. After earning a BSc from Georgetown University, worked with a consulting firm in New York City. I landed in New York City as well. Crazy, crazy. Before changing lanes to live and work with the endangered endemic birds of Mauritius. Thank you. That's a word I had never said before. Mauritius, in the Indian Ocean for nearly a year. Cool. That's a really awesome ox. His experience there involved extensive predator control, habitat restoration, and hands-on conservation work with species ranging from seabirds to pink pigeons to echo parakeets. That's pretty cool. And then after returning to the US, he worked with a PhD student at Mississippi State University on a successful field season studying osprey and human-wildlife conflict mitigation. And he joined PRC, leading the seabird monitoring and invasive predator control efforts in 2021. And we are so, so grateful that you did. So thank you for joining them. Thank you for being here today. And let me introduce Dylan. Thank you. I'll just stop this up. Yeah. And then, all right. Everyone here.
Yeah.
Turn the sound back on.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Patty. The Friends Group does a lot of great work, and they're a great resource to have as an ally for a lot of the work that we're doing. So just want to echo everything that Thomas already said. Let's see here. Never used one of these before. So yeah, my name is Dylan. I am a biologist with Pacific Rim Conservation. We mainly work at Kīlauea Point. My coworker Dave is the lead for another project that we work up in Kokei. So recently, the last couple of years, we've sort of been splitting our time between these two projects. But today I'm going to be talking about the work that we've been doing at Kīlauea Point, where I've been since 2021. So we'll start with the fence within the fence, sort of working chronologically here. So this is a 7-acre exclosure, different than an enclosure because it's designed to keep predators and invasive species out from within the fence rather than enclose animals within the fence. We call it Nihokū, which means large tooth in Moʻolelo, Hawaii. just because the overall structure of this area, which we call Crater Hill, resembles a large tooth, and apparently it has for many hundreds of years, and so we call it Nihokū. It's an elevated sloped site, which was selected as a translocation site in order to be secure from rising sea levels and to minimize light pollution from urban areas. These factors combined to make Nihokū an ideal site for a seabird colony. So most of Kīlauea town is on the other side of this ridge right here. And so it doesn't have a lot of light pollution, which I'll get into, is a big factor in why we decided to choose this site. And it's already a bustling seabird colony for many other species, and it's well above the sea level. A lot of the work that Pacific Rim does revolves around translocations from low-lying atolls in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands to higher elevation sites to ensure that these species will have a place to nest, a colony to live in for generations to come, especially when those the low-lying atolls are lost, which is sort of an inevitable thing at this point. So fence construction for Nihokū was completed in 2014. The fence is 2 meters tall. It has a rolled hood to prevent animals from climbing over and a mesh skirt that extends below ground to prevent rodents from digging underneath the fence. The stainless steel mesh with gaps small enough that young rodents cannot pass through. So here's the fence design. This is ideally 200 centimeters high, and it would prevent any animal from going up and over the fence or burrowing underneath the fence at the same time. The design comes from a range of projects in New Zealand where we get most of our cutting edge conservation technology from. There's a lot of great work being done out in New Zealand. Shortly after construction, all invasive mammalian predators were removed by early 2015. Simultaneously, there was a lot of effort invested in habitat restoration, clearing out dense invasive vegetation, and outplanting native plants to provide a suitable habitat for seabirds. The team also installed 76 artificial burrows in the ground to provide easy access habitat for the nesting birds. So most of the burrows today, this was a photo that was taken 10 years ago or so before most of the burrows were installed, but they wrap around this ridge right here and into a little grove of nio trees down there as well. So our target species are the Hawaiian petrel, the uwa'u, and the newel shearwater, known as the a'o. These are Hawaii's only 2 endemic seabirds, and both are listed under the Endangered Species Act. Both species suffered devastating declines from 1993 to 2013 due to a variety of threats, namely predation by non-native wildlife. Both species nest in rugged montane areas, making their colonies difficult to access and protect. Thus, translocation of these species to a more accessible, predator-free habitat became a high priority action item. Throughout the rest of the presentation, I'm going to refer to as the Hawaiian petrel as the hape and the newel shearwater as the nesh over here, which is shorthand for both species. So from 2012 to 2020, field crews led by Andre Rain, who is presently at ARC, worked to identify potential source colonies for the hape and nesh. They employed ground searching, conducting visual and auditory surveys to identify areas with high burrow densities and call rates. In 2015, the translocations began, and Andre's crews collected the chicks from the montane colonies. The translocations of these chicks took place in cohorts from 2015 to 2020, and PRC staff, this is before my time, but PRC staff became parents to each cohort of chicks, tube feeding them fish slurries, taking morphometric data, and making behavioral observations. Overall, our staff turned out to be excellent parents with an overall fledging success rate of 98%. So moving on to the post-translocation phase of the project. What is happening now in Nihokū and what's been going on since 2020 when the translocation concluded. This chart is just a quick snapshot of all of our returning hape. We have had a total of 9 individuals return, 4 pairs and 1 single male. Most birds are 3 to 5 years old upon return. They fled from the site and they go out to the open ocean out of sight of land for 3 to 5 years before they return to the exact site that they fledged from. Since 2022, all 4 pairs have attempted breeding but failed at various stages in the process. While it is to be expected that young, inexperienced parents won't succeed the first time or even the first few times, we have seen 1 hape chick fledge in 2022, another in 2023, a third in 2024. I'm going to get into what it looks like today. further on. So what a day in Nihokū looks like. So I'm gonna start with this video if I can. Perfect. So this is a burrow extraction of a seabird. This is me pulling a hape out of one of the artificial burrows. Okay. This one's not sound-based, but there's our bird. Want me to try again? That's going to be annoying. Cool. Yeah, we can try that again. So this is one of the two different burrow types that we have, and the Hawaiian petrels nest in there. And at the very beginning of the season, what we'll do when we detect a Hawaiian petrel in one of these burrows is we'll pull it out of the burrow, and each bird has an individual band. And the birds were banded when they were chicks before they fledged from the site. And if we can get the number off of the band, we can tell when it fledged, what sex it is, what burrow it fledged from, how far the burrow that we found it in is from the burrow that it exactly fledged from. Gives us a lot of information. So that's how we get, the Hawaiian petrels are very bitey too. They have some of the sharpest beaks of any bird. What's that? Yeah. Here's another example of one of the artificial burrows. So there's a cavity in the back that's covered with sandbags so these birds are used to nesting up in the mountains where the temperature is a lot cooler. And so one of the difficulties of a lower elevation site is it's going to be a lot hotter. And so we try and do everything we can to keep these burrows as cool as possible. And so each burrow is painted with a thermo-reflective paint. It has sandbags piled on top of it to reflect a lot of the sunlight, or as much as we possibly can. And it's buried underground. And then a tunnel attaches to the burrow, which makes it as natural as possible to the burrows that they would naturally be nesting in. And on the active burrows, we slap a trail camera on there so that we can tell when the birds are coming, when they're going, especially during the nesting season. When there's an egg, the Hawaiian petrels and the newell shearwaters and the wedge-tailed shearwaters will take incubation shifts. So the female lays the egg, obviously. She usually goes out to sea for a couple of weeks at a time while the male incubates, and she replenishes all of her sustenance that she lost by laying her egg. And then the male and female swap out, feeding the chicks and incubating until the chick fledges from the site. And so the cameras allow us just deeper insight into the life cycle of these birds and how they operate when they're burrowing. This photo is of the sound system that we have in place within the fence, within the fence. This is a device that was invented by our boss, Eric Vanderwerf. It is a solar-powered device that essentially broadcasts programmed mesh and hape calls throughout the night. So the solar panel can tell the device when it's not receiving sunlight anymore, and it begins to broadcast, and then it charges its own battery during the day. And the idea is to replicate a thriving colony to attract birds that would be passing by, or attract birds that would be looking where they are looking for the site from where they fledged. Yeah, and I'll talk more about that in a second. So this is a trail camera clip of a bird entering a burrow. In this case, this is a Hawaiian petrel. And in the background, you may be able to hear the newell shearwater calls being played from the sound system. Okay. No, it's all good. Do you want me to turn it off? After. Okay, it's faint. I'm sorry. But that's the idea. You don't need sound. Actually, there's one video that I would love sound for. But okay. Let's go sound off for now. So this next video is a clip of a Hawaiian petrel leaving a burrow on a rainy early morning. In the background, you can hear through a sound, you can hear the Hawaiian petrel calls being played from sound system. So you can also see right there at the very end, the little reflective piece on the bird's leg, that's the band that we're looking for. And it's usually got 9 integers on it. Yeah. And then we got another video of a hape entering different burrow while the Nesh calls play in the background. I love this stuff. I hope you guys do too. They fit in pretty perfectly. The Hawaiian petrel is one of the larger seabirds that we work with at the site compared to the other birds. Yeah, real beefy bird. And then one of my favorite clips, this is a Hawaiian petrel chick stretching its wings outside of the burrow. Before we see this one, unfortunately, I should say the wedge-tailed shearwaters in the site have made a determined effort to use the artificial burrows we have in place for the hape and the Nesh. We've gone from 4 active wedgie nests in the 76 burrows in the site 2 years ago to 9 2 years ago, and then last year we had this year we have 21 wedgie nests, and so they're expanding. The wedgies are prolific, so we're currently we have deployed wedgie deterrents at a couple of the burrow mouths that do have a known hape presence. However, more long-term solution is needed before the wedgies take over the entire site. But so I unfortunately don't have a photo in the presentation, but what we did this year in a burrow where the Hawaiian petrels had already laid an egg, we found that the wedgies were entering the burrow. They were waiting outside the burrow to essentially harass the Hawaiian petrels whenever they'd be coming and going. And so the most we could do is I cut a square pillowcase and then zip tied it to the mouth of the burrow and then cut a slit in there. And so that way, the idea is that the Hawaiian petrels, who already have an egg in the burrow, would be motivated enough to enter the burrow, but it's going to be enough of a deterrent for the wedgies not to go all the way into the burrow. And it's worked so far. Yeah. So this is one of our chicks a couple of years ago, stretching its wings for potentially the first time. You can tell that it's a chick because it's covered in down feathers over most of its body right here. Yeah. They do actually. The Hawaiian petrels and the newels, the wedgies, since there's a lot more of them, their life cycle is a little bit, there's a larger range of when they'll arrive, when they'll lay eggs, when the chicks will fledge. But for the most part, the Hawaiian petrels and the newel shearwaters will both arrive in the spring. They'll find their mates again, and they'll lay their eggs in early June, late May-ish. And then the eggs will hatch in August, and the chicks will usually fledge by November, sometime during November. Got it. So in 2022, we had the first translocated newel shearwater return to Nihokū. He was a 4-year-old male who had fledged from the site in 2018. He spent most of the 2022 season calling from inside of one of the artificial burrows, checking out the social attraction speakers, and searching for a mate. The male was detected calling from within an artificial burrow during a nighttime auditory survey, during which we record observations during 2 sunset and sunrise periods of flying birds, landing birds, and anything else of note. The surveys are performed monthly within the Nihokū fence throughout the nesting season of our target species. To be more specific, we go sit out in the site for 2 hours after sunset and 2 hours before sunrise. This happens to be when the birds are most active in the air, when they're coming and going from their burrows, and gives us the best chance of detecting birds flying in the air or birds landing or returning, leaving their burrows. Forget what this video is actually, but. Oh, yes. So this is, during our night surveys, we have night vision goggles. We have flashlights to help us detect birds that are flying around better. That's a pair of Hawaiian petrels that was detected through the night vision goggles, just sort of what it looks like. So a second nesh was detected during an auditory survey, like I was just explaining, in 2023. We were excited to learn that it was an unbanded bird, becoming the first wild nesh to be socially attracted to Nihokū. A couple months later, we found it in the same burrow with our banded male, but it was too late in the season for a breeding attempt. In 2024, however, the pair successfully raised the chick to the point of fledging, becoming the first Newell shearwater chick to hatch and fledge from within the Nihokū site. This is the pair of Newell shearwaters right here, and that's their lovely chick from last year. So as we speak, there are 2 Hawaiian petrel chicks being monitored within Nihokū. Since 2022, we've had 3 Cape chicks successfully fledge from the site, and we're optimistic that these 2 more chicks will fledge in October, November. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so this is the Hawaiian petrel sticking its face out from within the burrow that has the wedgie current on there. And this is the Hape chick as of just last week, actually. This is the smaller of the 2 Hape chicks. And I'll get into the other seabird monitoring, but this is a good example of what we might see at any number of seabird nests across the refuge. So obviously there's a chick in the photo, but right here you have the egg membrane. And the egg membrane is a really good indication that a nest has hatched, whether or not there's a chick actually present at the nest. And so the egg membrane is not as hard as the eggshell. It's the lining on the inside of the eggshell. And so when a chick hatches, it separates the eggshell from the egg membrane. And the eggshell usually breaks into large pieces, but the egg membrane is mostly intact. And so during some of our other seabird monitoring surveys, especially in areas where there's a predator presence, we may find an egg membrane at a nest, but no chick. And that's a good indication that the nest did hatch into a chick, but the chick disappeared somehow, likely a predator. So you can tell that this one hatched because of the egg membrane. We've also had bulwers petrel presence at the site. It's been a few years now, and this is a lone female bulwers petrel. Been observed in burrow 55 within Nihokū. She's not banded. She was not translocated there. The assumption is that she was attracted to the site because of the presence of other seabirds, because of the social attraction loudspeakers that are broadcasting seabird calls night in and night out. It has laid an egg twice, but the egg failed to hatch both times, presumably because it's infertile. She's a lone female. We've put cameras on her burrows and never seen any other bulwers petrel there. I'm not too sure, to be honest. I don't think that they are threatened by any stretch. They're sighted up in the mountains occasionally. They're sighted on Lehua Island occasionally. There's a lot of bulwers nests actually out on Lehua. And I think they're pretty widespread globally in the tropics as well. So this one does have sound. For years, at least 3 Kermadec petrels have also been observed at crepuscular hours and throughout portions of the night at the Nihokū fence. These are large petrels. They're about the size of the Hawaiian petrels. They're native to the southern hemisphere. Their namesake, the Kermadec Islands, are a group of islands that are technically part of New Zealand. And their presence contributes to the diversity of a growing seabird colony. We are monitoring for signs of nesting activity, which could possibly be the first Kermadec petrel nest in the northern hemisphere. Go ahead. And this video might be kind of loud, but this is a video that I took of one of the Kermadec petrels calling. So it's a pretty distinctive call. You're going to recognize it right away. There's been at least 3 permadeck petrels sighted, and as we see here, recently this year we set up 2 of these artificial. It's not technically a burrow construction, but it is a nesting shelter, because the kermdeck petrels are not burrowing seabirds. They are known to lay a single egg, a lot like other seabirds, on the surface of the ground, preferably underneath some sort of shelter, like an overhanging branch or a canopy. And so in order to make a nesting attempt as easy as possible for these birds, we set up these 2 nesting shelters. And we've had kermdeck petrel presence at the shelters. We set them up in areas where they had been sighted on the ground, where that last video had been taken. No nesting attempts so far, but we're excited. The kermdeck petrels are a funny one because since they're native to the southern hemisphere and they are asynchronous breeders in the first place, which means that they don't necessarily have a specific breeding season, their presence here in the northern hemisphere makes it hard to predict when, if at all, they would try for a nesting attempt. Totally, yeah, they could be. Okay. Excitingly for Nihokū and for Kīlauea Point, the refuge's native wildlife now has another layer of protection. In late 2023, a much larger predator exclusion fence was completed by Pono Pacific. This one encompasses close to 170 acres of habitat, including Nihokū, which is now doubly protected. Call it the fence within the fence. This new fence is over 2 miles long, making it the longest predator exclusion fence in the state, but not for long. The design of the fence is nearly identical to the Nihokū enclosure, so it's got the same rolled hood. Ideally, it's 200 centimeters tall, and it's got the skirt to prevent animals from burrowing underneath. The maintenance of the fence, after it was completed, has been a task within itself. So I would like to thank the Kupus and the staff who have worked hard to keep the fence functional. And I'm going to get into the eradication efforts that PRC has led since the fence construction had been underway for cats, rats, and pigs. So this is the rough final fence alignment. This green circle right here is the Nihokū enclosure, and then the yellow lines are the refuge boundaries, and the pink lines are the new fence. And as you can tell, the Nihokū enclosure is a circular enclosure. The new fence ties off at a couple of cliff ends that are meant to be cat-proof, and then also at the very end of Kīlauea Point, over here, there's another stretch of fence. Took a couple of years to complete, but it's done. So this may go without saying here, but feral cats are a devastating invasive predator for native wildlife, from seabirds to forest birds to monk seals. With the abundance of ground nesting seabirds across the refuge, including 20,000 pairs of wedgies, hundreds of pairs of tropic birds, nene and laysan albatross, even a single cat can wreak havoc. When I first started as a biologist at Kīlauea Point, signs of cat kills and seabirds were plentiful. Our trapping efforts usually utilize tomahawk traps, which are box traps that trap cats alive and allow us to safely remove them from the ecosystem. By and large, the cats that are trapped at Kīlauea Point are not spayed, they're not neutered, they're highly antisocial and aggressive toward humans. There have been a couple occasions where we've caught cats that have been collared or show signs of domestication. We took those to KHS, hopefully to try and reunite them with their owners. As you may, let's show this video. So here's a cat in a wedgie colony. This video is of a cat entering one of the traps that we set up. See if you can spot anything about the cats here. We're not going to see the trap close, but that's how it works. They're the same cat. This is the cat maybe 200-300 yards away at another trap. It had to go through hundreds of other wedgies to get to that trap. This is 2:44 in the morning. I believe that video was taken just several hours later, hundreds of yards away. And you can tell because both cats in the video and in the photo here have that short tail. So throughout the eradication process, we kept a log of the cats seen on camera based on identifiable features such as short tail, clipped ear, different styles of coat patterns, which we could use when the cats were captured to match them up and to ensure that that we were trapping all the cats that we had seen on the game cameras. Oops. So our rodent eradication, to accomplish our mission of eradicating rodents from the refuge, we set up a grid system across the 170 acres of accessible area within the refuge with evenly spaced points, each with a locked box for rodenticide and a tracking tunnel station that is used to determine the presence and/or the absence of rodents. The rodenticide is an anticoagulant poison, which is used in rodent eradications across the world. And the tracking tunnels are used to inform decisions to deploy extra rodenticide stations in hotspots. So that would be a grid point with a consistent rodent presence month over month as we're running the system. Since rodent baiting and tracking started in 2023, we have seen mouse and rat presence peak at above 40% of all the stations across the refuge and drop to around 5% of all the stations within recent months. The rate of blocks consumed per day in each station has also dropped from almost 40 blocks per day since we started the eradication efforts to fewer than 10 blocks a day recently. We also have deployed A24 devices to ensure rodent control in more inaccessible areas of the refuge where we cannot regularly visit to rebait stations and set up tracking tunnels. So in these photos, we have an example of a bait box with the rodenticide and a nice dead rat, kind of what you want to see. And then over here, we have an example of one of our ink cards that we use for determining the rodent presence and absence. And so this card, which we get imported from New Zealand, once again, the cutting edge of conservation, we slide into a tunnel. The black part here is wet ink. And we put peanut butter in the very middle of the card and leave it out for one night, 2 nights tops. And the idea is that the rodents will run through to try and get the peanut butter and then leave their tracks on the other side. And after years of doing this, you can tell the difference between gecko tracks, mice tracks, rat tracks, ant tracks, lizard tracks, snail tracks, which tend to just like glob over the entire thing. And so we take a percentage of stations that have rat tracks, mice tracks, or both. And that's how we track the presence or absence and determine if the rodenticide that we're putting out is actually working to eliminate these rodents. The feral pig eradication. So feral pigs are problematic for many reasons. And at Kīlauea Point, it quickly became clear that they were responsible for a large amount of nest failures and seabird kills. 69 out of 73 vulnerable nests were attacked and destroyed by feral pigs within the 2022 to 2023 moly season, most of them within a 2-week period after most of the eggs were laid, during which the pigs became public enemy #1 of our predator eradication efforts. This past season, right before the final pigs were removed, 51 out of the 78 vulnerable nests were lost, once again in a short period, late July, early February, when the eggs were just beginning to hatch. So in these photos that were captured a few years ago, you can see the moly nest here. The pig approaches, it eats the egg out from underneath the bird, and then ostensibly flips the bird away, and the bird is not too happy about it. So we made it a huge priority to get these pigs out of here. The pigs were also known to attack and destroy nene nests as well. The nene were highly vulnerable to pig attacks. As with the moly nest attacks, we found that 1, possibly only 2 pigs were likely responsible for all the nest attacks. This is a learned behavior, and the same predator logic applies for cats as well, to learn that ground-dwelling defenseless seabirds and their eggs are an easy source of sustenance. So in this series of photos here, you can see the nene nest. In the same minute that a pig approaches the nene nest, the mother leaves and the nene comes back, finds her nest destroyed in the morning. Throughout our efforts to remove feral pigs from within the refuge, we found countless examples of wedgies as well that had been attacked, killed, or eaten by feral pigs. Usually, we found separated wings, heads, or the feet of the seabirds, as the pigs were known to kill birds by stomping on them and ripping them apart. On one occasion, I actually shot a large female pig that was in the middle of eating a wedge-tailed shearwater. How did we do it? We employed a range of strategies to track, locate, and remove these feral pigs from within the refuge. We honed our hunting areas based on signs of pig presence, from trail camera photos, as were shown in the last couple of slides, and this one right here, to bird carcasses and collapsed burrows, which would be a sign of pigs attempting to attack birds inside of their burrows. We were limited to shooting the pigs during nighttime hours, typically from sunset to sunrise. We used night vision goggles, handheld thermal scopes, 12-gauge shotguns with buckshot. Throughout the course of the nearly 2.5 years that control efforts began, before the last pigs were removed, we identified freshwater sources on the refuge and regularly used game trails to stake out for passing pigs. Several occasions, collaborated with Fish and Wildlife and USDA Wildlife Services in order to employ different tactics, learn from a wider range of feral pig eradication efforts across the country. This past spring, we were down to one pregnant female who gave birth to 2 piglets about a week before she was found. She was identifiable based on a couple markings on her coat, and she was the only pig seen across the refuge for at least a month beforehand, which led us to believe that she was the last pig. The piglets somewhat miraculously survived undetected on the refuge for nearly 3 weeks before they themselves were found and removed, and the pig eradication was completed. Grand total of 55 pigs removed from the refuge. So the pigs primarily used game trails to run back and forth across the refuge. Like I said, with these nest attacks, we found that it was usually 1 or 2 huge male pigs that got a taste for attacking nests, for eating seabirds. But we also honed our detection skills looking at pig tracks across the refuge, especially relatively fresh ones like this. Photo shows too.
This before the predator-proof fence was put up on the outside? How
So
do the pigs get in?
the pigs have been there.
The fenced in when the fence was up.
In a way, yeah.
55 pigs.
55 pigs.
Probably were 55.
Yeah. There were. I mean, it took 2.5 years. There were plenty of instances where we felt like we were down to only a handful, and then we'd see piglets somewhere, or yeah.
So they got that pink line around that shows
The pink line on the map earlier shows that it doesn't go down the cliff. So how do you keep the mice, the cats, and the pigs out?
So the fence, that's a great question. The fence is designed to tie off at cliffs, and at those cliff tie-off points, it was deemed that it would be impossible for the cliff wall is too vertical, and extra fencing was added around. You know, when you go to a harbor and you see the gates to prevent people from going onto the docks at the harbor, it sort of looks something like that, where it would prevent a cat or a pig or even a rodent from going around the end point of the fence. In the other cases, we just added extra rodenticide stations, cat traps, and cameras while the fence was under construction to monitor what could potentially be a weak point in the fence construction. Yeah. So for some more insight into our perspective while working on the pig eradication, this is a video of a nene family through the handheld thermal scope that we use to see the pigs at night. Obviously, the pigs move fast and move silently, but the thermal allowed us to see them from a distance and do our best to get within range. Uh-oh. So you can see the gosling is just hot. So just an example of one of the tools that we used during our eradication efforts. Barn owls are another predator that we have worked to control at Kīlauea Point. The barn owls are one of two species of owls found in the Hawaiian Islands, the other being the native short-eared owl, or the pueo. The barn owl was an introduced species decades ago and has proved a destructive predator to native bird species all over the islands. At Kīlauea Point, signs of barn owl depredations of wedge-tailed shearwaters in particular are found often. The carcass of the seabird will often be found face up with most of its chest cavity and the flesh on its neck consumed. Of course, the fence that we're here to talk about is no preventative measure against barn owls. The best option for the barn owls is consistent hunting efforts to limit their prevalence. And to date, we've removed 10 barn owls from areas within the fence. The photos here show a barn owl. So this is a camera that we put on a Laysan albatross nest. And right here is a Laysan albatross chick. And we were astonished to find barn owls would even go after a Laysan albatross chick. After we found these photos, we went back to the nest. The chick was unharmed, unscathed, still there. It successfully fledged. But even the fact that the barn owl would attempt to carry it off demonstrates the prowess of these predators. That chick was maybe, I don't remember exactly. This was last year. The photo is from mid to late February, so probably three or 4 weeks old. It was a small chick. It was not a huge chick, but yeah. The chick was fine. The chick was fine. The barn owl tried and couldn't, and then flew away. Yeah. So I'm going to get into the seabird monitoring, which was sort of the other half of PRC's mission at Kīlauea Point. In order to quantify the effectiveness of the fence and the predator control efforts on the reproductive rates of the seabirds, we employed a range of different methods for each species, broken down into phases in order to understand how the reproductive rates of these birds change over time. These phases are pre-fence construction, pre-eradication, post-fence construction, and post-eradication. So I'll start with the red-footed booby. I learned recently that they were down to only 100 or so breeding pairs in the 60s at Kīlauea Point. And the red-footed booby colony at Kīlauea Point, as we all probably have seen, has multiplied into the thousands of birds in the present day. So in order to most effectively assess the reproductive rates of these huge colonies across the refuge, we employed ground-based visual surveys, photographs of the colonies taken month over month, using the position of a bird at a unique nest to determine the nesting status. Based on the posture of the bird, as you can see in this grainy photo, we can tell whether or not the bird is roosting, nesting, or a nest that would be impossible to tell, which is the unknown. The goal is to have a sample of nests from 3 different subcolonies across the refuge, and based on the photos, a tally of nests that have produced a late-stage chick on the verge of fledging, which is then deemed a successful nest. Final data for this species is still being collected and processed using a special software called .goose, which allows us to mark individual nests in the photos month over month and track them to their ultimate stage by the end of the season. Since the boobies are tree nesting birds, their reproductive rates are less susceptible to ground predators such as pigs, but their nests are still accessible to rodents and sometimes cats, which may be inclined to climb up trees and eat eggs or attack flightless chicks. This is a late stage booby chick. This is an earlier stage booby chick over here. The wedge-tailed shearwaters. So overall, there are more than 300,000 estimated pairs of wedgies nesting in all of the Hawaiian Islands, around 20,000 of which are estimated to nest at Kīlauea Point. Their ground nesting abundance unfortunately makes the wedgies an ideal indicator of predator removal efforts from within the fence. For our surveys, we have been using a sample-based method to determine reproductive success across different subsections of the refuge. We are currently in the middle of our wedge-tailed shearwater monitoring efforts for 2025. So in July, we marked 600 burrows across the refuge, and we'll be back in mid-October to revisit every single one of the 600 burrows. Each burrow is marked with a yellow tent stake with a nest ID on it, a GPS point, habitat type, nest contents, whether it has an egg, chick, the number of adults, or a dead chick with any clues as to how it died. And all of this data is recorded for each nest, and the burrows with a full-grown chick on the verge of fledging in October are deemed a successful nest. In 2022, the failure rate, which is a nest that does not have a fully fledged chick within it, was nearly 50%. 2024, it wasn't quite 30%. And so these are the converse statistics to the stats that you can see here and demonstrate the impact of the fence and the predator removal in one arena of the seabird monitoring. And then last but not least, we have our red-tailed tropic birds. Some of my favorite, yeah. So Kīlauea Point is home to the largest aggregation of tropic birds on Kauai. The Hawaiian Islands boast approximately a quarter of the worldwide population of red-tailed tropic birds. Since 2022, our goal has been to monitor every single accessible tropic bird nest on the refuge, as well as those within Kīlauea Point proper, which is the public access area where the lighthouse is, which is outside the fence, and we've been using it sort of as a control area. We visit each nest once a month, recording habitat type, vegetation cover, proximity to the cliff edges, and once again, the nest status. Whether or not there's a chick, how many adults, what stage the chick is at. We have stages 1 through 10 for a chick, depending on how much down, which feathers, and where on its body it's grown in yet, whether or not it has any down feathers left at all. So in 2022, we had 127 total red-tailed nests across the refuge. 2023, we only had 104. And then 2024, we had 118. 2025 so far has yielded the highest number of active nests in recent years with 164, no doubt, result of the fence and the active predator eradication efforts to protect these vulnerable ground nesting seabirds. At this point in the nesting season last year, so mid-September 2024, we had only recorded 32 fledged chicks up until this point. This year, we already have 73 fledged chicks, and many more on the verge of fledging as the season winds down. I'd be remiss not to mention that in July, we had an off-leash dog, unfortunately, that killed 14 birds and destroyed 13 nests out at Kahili Beach. This is an area that is outside of the new fence. On the west side of the river mouth over there, the dead birds had telltale signs of being attacked by a dog or multiple dogs with puncture wounds on opposite sides of the body. So very clearly, the birds ended up in the dog's mouth. But the incident serves as a reminder that while the fence provides protection for the native birds within, there are many more birds that are still vulnerable to invasive predators across Hawaii. Protecting them often means being conscientious citizens. Dogs on leash. Here's a map of all of the known red-tailed nests. These are the red-tailed nests within Kīlauea Point proper. There's the lighthouse over here. Most of the nests were out on Moʻolelo Point. That's definitely our highest density area, with a few others on the rim of Crater Hill up here. This little cutie is a stage 1 chick. So it's completely covered in down, probably a week or two old. Still got a lot of growing left to do. A couple other species. So I want to shout out the dedicated volunteers who have worked hard to monitor the moly nest across the refuge in recent years, in particular Louise and Yuka. We're very much looking forward to the return of the moly in early November and what should be a very busy nesting season without the presence of pigs or cats within the refuge. The nene have also returned from their summer abodes up in the mountains and are flocking again in mass across most of the North Shore. You guys might have already seen them on the roads around here. And they're preparing to build nests and lay eggs. Both the nene are highly susceptible to ground predators, especially feral pigs, but the upcoming season is bound to be more successful than recent years. So thank you to the Fish and Wildlife staff, as well as the kupus in past years for their efforts monitoring the nene nest and the lay sand albatross across the refuge too. So to wrap up, I want to say thank you to all of our dedicated staff, partners, funders, and volunteers who have contributed to this project. None of the successful outcomes, which I was able to share with you today, would have been possible if it wasn't a group effort. So thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Hi, is this thing on? Oh, okay. Big fan. Thank you for sharing this excellent work. If there is one action item that we can all take with us, what would you like us to walk away from this and share with others or act on, or how can we support?
Good question. I'd consider donating to the Friends group. I'd consider donating to Pacific Rim Conservation. Otherwise, I think it's just a matter of being vigilant and being good citizens in what is a very fragile ecosystem here on Kauai for a lot of the birds. It means driving slow on roads, keeping your dogs on a leash, just being conscientious of the environment that we're all part of.
Cats indoors.
And keep your cats indoors. Thank you. Yeah, Kathleen.
Yeah, I have a question about how you determine how many birds of the different seabird populations. Was it a percent, like 600 booby nests, or how you decided how many was a sample size?
So we based most of our methodologies for the seabird monitoring on a very comprehensive USGS paper that was put out in 2019 that includes refuge-wide surveys of all the seabirds. And we've done our best to replicate a lot of the methods that they used to do their overall censuses of all the seabirds. But it's also beyond that just a matter of manpower, a matter of time and resources, and estimating what is achievable within a certain range of limitations and what's not. Yeah.
So I work for Princeville Moʻolelo, and I just want to tell you guys, this man is a literal goat in the pig hunting. Where Dylan would go to catch a pig was pretty impressive. And I just want to say on our behalf, thank you so much,
Thanks,
because
Kathleen.
there's to do a job and then there's to do with conviction, knowing what you're doing. And that guy and their team is really pretty amazing.
Thanks, Kathleen. Yeah. You got a microphone.
Is there a way to know what type of predator has wiped out a colony? Because there is a colony in Haena that I discovered is like 40 dead birds out there.
Of what kind of bird?
I believe shearwaters.
Wedge-tailed shearwaters.
Yeah.
So there are definitely signs that you can look for. Like a pig, for example, is bound to rip a bird apart. You're going to find pieces of the bird spread out. You may not even find the pieces that would comprise an entire bird, because they're willing to eat bones. They're willing to eat beaks. They'll eat anything. A cat kill is going to look similar. You're going to find feathers everywhere. It's going to be a mess. Yeah. It could be a dog. Yeah, with the dog kills on the red-tailed tropic birds back in July, none of the birds had been eaten. They were simply killed. So that's just one example of a different way that a predator might take a bird. Yeah. And
the dog eat it, they just.
yeah.
They'll whack 40 birds in the water colonies.
It's a game.
They just grab and shake, and then they move to the next. It's just like their little inner wolves get lit up for hunting, and it's not for food. It's just they get triggered and they go.
That happened probably 3 weeks ago. The owner said that hear the birds coming and going, and then suddenly it was quiet. And these birds looked like it was about 3 weeks, just from they were kind of dry and
I did see something recently down by Allerton's Beach. There was a post on social media of some wedgies that were found dead on a newly paved road there, apparently having mistaken the flat unmarked surface of the newly paved road for the surface of the ocean, and attempted to dive, which is how they would behave out on the open ocean. But without those markings on this road, I think they found at least a dozen birds out there. Oh, could be it too. I'm not sure. I only saw the beginning. Yeah.
I noticed that there was, on the point, there was a fence. Why did they make the fence there? Why didn't it go all the way to the full end of the point?
Talking about this one right here?
Yes.
So if you've ever been out to this area, it's pretty easy to, so here's Kahili out here. It's pretty easy to walk out and then up onto the highest point here. It is not, like most of this is a vertical cliff. And so that's why this section between these two end off points was deemed cat-proof, rodent-proof. But just the topography right here is not cat-proof, rodent-proof, pig-proof, or anything. So there needed to be an extra fence line right there to prevent animals from going around and then just up the tip of the peninsula.
So there are cats on that point.
We've trapped cats on this point before, definitely. Yeah. Well, this is a shelf right here. So if you're at Kahili, you can walk all the way out to the end of the point there. It's pretty accessible. Yeah. I mean, it's astonishing where these cats can go. Great question. Yeah, go. You want a microphone? Yeah. So currently so she's asking for an overview of Pacific Rim and our mission and our presence. Currently, we have 8 staff members here on Kauai. It's just myself and Dave here running a couple of different projects. Most of our staff are based over on Oahu, where we primarily do similar translocation projects, fence eradication projects, mostly at James Campbell National Wildlife Refuge. We have a small team that does Oahu Elapaio monitoring in the valleys on Oahu. And one of our biologists runs the Manuoku, the white tern monitoring citizen science program in downtown Honolulu. So he's been in charge of tagging trees that have active nests, returning fallen chicks to it's not much of a nest. It's not a nest at all. Returning fallen chicks back up to the branches and collecting all the data from the birds within Honolulu there. And we're also looking to expand into other areas. One of our coworkers recently is going to be working with a couple of different seabird species in the South Pacific shortly. And yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Currently, yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, Thorn. I'll repeat it. Yeah.
Have you been on Kīlauea Rock? Are there any seabirds nesting out there?
Yeah, so Thorn asked if we've been out to Makapili Rock, which is this rock right here. And the answer is yes. A couple of years ago, we determined that since that rock was part of the refuge, it also needed some rodenticide. And so we brought some rodenticide in boxes out to that island only on one day in August of 2023, I want to say. And we found tons of signs of seabirds. There was tons of burrows all over the place. There was guano splattered all over the island, but not one burrow was actually occupied. It wasn't a formal survey of the rock, so strictly anecdotal. But it's hard to say why or why not there weren't any birds on that particular day. I haven't personally been back since, but I am curious, definitely. Yeah.
I don't have any questions, but I just have comments. Thank you for the wonderful presentation with very interesting information. And thanks for the amazing jobs you guys are doing.
Right on. Absolutely.
And Bob.
Do you have any information about Mokuai and what's happened there with predation and any success with the nesting boxes out there?
PRC is not involved in the Mokuai stuff. I think that's mostly the Kauai Endangered Seabird Recovery Project. That's going to be the talk that Thomas next month with Dilek. I know that she and her team have been out to Mokuai a handful of times recently to do island-wide surveys for the wedgies out there, set up the sound system as well, similar to the one that we have in the fence within the fence. And that's about all I can tell you. Yeah.
Great questions, great group. We have more, yes.
I was wondering if there's any plans to expand the fence at all, or do another fence, and also any problems you see with the maintenance of the current fence?
Sorry, what was the last part?
If you foresee any problems with maintaining the current fence?
As far as I know, there aren't any plans to expand this fence. I do know that they are on the verge of breaking ground on a similar fence at James Campbell National Wildlife Refuge over in Oahu, which is going to supersede this fence as the largest fence of this kind in the state. The maintenance is a great question. Yeah, a lot of this fence line goes through steep, dense forested area, and one of the biggest concerns is that once trees grow big enough that they start to overhang over the fence, and that creates a pathway for rodents, for cats to get over and into the fence. And so I'm not personally too involved in the overall fence maintenance, but I do know that there have been a couple of different strategies employed to keep grass, keep trees back from within a barrier on either side of the fence, just to prevent that overhang hazard, as you mentioned. Yeah, it does take a lot of work. Yeah.
Maybe building off of that, I just want to share that it's obvious that it takes a number of agencies, a number of partners, a number of volunteers like Thorn, all to maintain these spaces and keep them going and productive. And the gift of this beautiful fence is an amazing thing. And now it's a challenge for Fish and Wildlife on the north shore of the island, where you turn your head for 2 minutes and it's, weed is now a foot tall. It's an incredible challenge to maintain a safe distance of that. And so it's not my kuleana, but it is my kuleana to help bring resources as a friends group to Fish and Wildlife for them to then have the ability to sustain this gift so that we can have a whole future of wildlife conservation happening behind the safe boundaries of that fence. And as we've been talking about over the last few months, this gift came at a time when Fish and Wildlife has been a historic level of defunding and destaffing. And so I appreciate all of you, because our friends group and the resources that we're able to channel into very specific work like that, bringing resources to the fence and the protection of that, and even helping to find ways to partner and underwrite the support services of Pacific Rim Conservation. That's part of what we're here for. I think our usefulness and our value as a friends group and our connection to the community is more important than ever. So I thank you, and I thank you, our broader community, and thank you, Dylan, for your amazing work.
This is awesome. Yeah.
Folks online, thank you as well. Have a great evening and join us again in October.